Good morning, students. Let's wait for a few minutes for everyone to join, and then we'll get started with the user activity part of the course. Good morning, Karan. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Let's get started. Let's wait for a few more minutes. Good morning. Let me take some feedback. How is the class going? Are you able to follow what I'm teaching with this CRM app? You want something extra? Maybe? Okay. So if you have anything that I can add, that will be a uh, good add-on. Just let me know. Mhm. Okay. Mhm. So let's spend some time today talking about some of the concepts that we have seen so far and how they relate to the overall app configuration. Okay, so we have and I'll draw a mind map for this because I think that will be a good idea. There is something called a CRM app. Okay, and there are different components of this CRM app. I would rather rub it, sorry, erase, and just join. Did I miss anything? No, Aradhya. I was just taking feedback on how the classes are going, and I started talking about the overall structure of the app. Okay, so we have something called a CRM app, and there are different components of this app which have different purposes. There is a concept of separation of concerns. Separation of concerns. According to this concept, imagine you are designing a room. Then every part of the room should have a clear purpose. Then only the design is good. Okay. If you want to design something clean, you have to make things in the proper place. You have to organize them well. What we typically see in software is a top-down approach of designing. So we'll have a CRM app that will be further divided into multiple parts, multiple folders, and each folder is an industry practice. Like people have been using the same folders for all kinds of apps, so they are set in stone, and therefore it is called as a framework. Okay, framework is this idea that you can relate different things into you can put different things into different buckets and they work out well. So I'm just talking about a framework of how do you structure your code in case of a backend application. So the first thing we have, which is quite interesting, is the controller. What is a controller? Can you tell me? And there is something called as model. There's no view in this. I mean, view is just the route. So view is on the front end right now. We have controller and model. Can you tell me what is the difference between controller and model? And why can you derive the whole framework from first principles? What do you want to do with all this organizing of the code? Let's discuss these things. Model is a database. That is uh, that is a close approximation. You can think of it as the DB. You can call it a DB layer. Okay. What is controller? Controller is something that controls the model. Does that definition make sense? controls the model, something that is going to interact with the model and change it over time. That is your controller. Now there will be different components of model as we discuss. First is the user component that we have been discussing so far. Uh, Question give response to client. Controller, that is also a good idea. Controller handles the request. But controller you can think of like something that sits between the client and the model. Suppose model is here and client is here, then controller is the closest piece of software that sits closer to the model. Okay. What other things come between controller client and between client and controller? So think about this area. What will you put here? Okay. And then DB can also be a ticket. We will have a ticket data. We will have ticket collection also. So I'll discuss that in few minutes. But what else sit between client and controller? Can you tell me what else can sit between client and controller? View. You can think of view as the client itself. We don't have a special view. Middleware, that is a good idea. Then there is an optional middleware layer between controller and client. And the idea between this is before query goes to the controller should receive a complete query. Okay. And it should get a request body basically. Now middleware is going to do some things which is common across multiple controllers. How do I put it? Let me just take another page. Suppose you have 5 controllers: controller 1, controller 2. They have their specific request response pairs. You understand this part? You have 4 controllers with their own request and response pairs. Now, there can be services which multiple controllers might be wanting to use. For example, verify ticket. Imagine you are living in imagine there is a big company and there are different rooms that some visitor can go to in the company. But there will be one service that all the rooms will be using, which is a security guard. Okay. Everyone who enters the building, no matter where he goes, he has to go through a security guard. There may be multiple doors for the security for the visitor to enter, but all of them will have security guards. So it doesn't make sense in a company to have a single security guard for every room. Like suppose I am managing operations or marketing, and it will not make sense to me that I manage my own security guard. I would rather want a security service which is going to manage security for all the rooms. Does that make sense? Am I making sense? You will have another security service which is going to manage the security for the whole building. No matter who needs the security, he has to go to that person. It doesn't make sense to have your own security guard all the times. Similarly, verify ticket is a middleware which is basically going to provide services for multiple controllers. There is some functionality that is common across controllers, and then you don't want to write that functionality into each one of them. So what you do is you abstract it out into a middleware. Are we clear till this point? Gauri, are you in the class? You seem to be quiet these days. Nitish Nayan. Okay, so that's one. So controller model middleware. Middleware. Middleware provides provides common services services to controllers. What else do you have in the model? What else do you have in the application? And try to derive. So I want to spend some time. I wish I would have done this in a class where more students were there, but I mean, those of you who are here can benefit from this. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to derive this framework which we have created from some first principles. Okay, I want to derive this framework from some first principle, so you understand why we are running this framework on our computer. Okay, maybe on Monday again I'll reiterate over this framework because there will be 20 odd students more joining. But what else do you have in your application? Routes. Exactly. So routes. And can Ekta tell us what is the route and where does it sit? It sits between client and controller. That is correct. So it sits here. It sits between client and middleware. Okay. And how does this work? Let's go back to our analogy of a building. So when you have a office building, you would want different routes for going to different places in the building. You enter from this gate, and or there will be four gates and there will be four paths that you can take, and these paths will dictate where the security guard will stand, where the rooms are, and if somebody comes with a request, what is the best place, what is the best route he has to take. Ideally, everyone who is entering the building, the goal is he should be able to reach wherever his destination is. That is the importance of a route. Okay, what is the use of a route if you cannot reach to your destination? Suppose you are starting in Hyderabad and you want to go to Delhi. What is the use of a road if it does not lead you to Delhi, if it stops in the middle? Suppose you come to a dead end and you cannot reach Delhi. So that's not a good idea. So again, just like you have these paths in the building from moving from one place to another, you have routes in your application which dictates how the requests are traveling through the application. Okay. So the request will start at the client, and client will hit a proper URL. Okay. And depending on, so so imagine you have a building called as localhost colon 3000. This is the building that you have. And this building will have multiple doors that you can enter from into the building. And depending on which gate you are taking, for example, there are different gates for different people. The service worker or the housekeeping will take a different route to the building. There will be a different route for the VIPs. There will be a different route for the. So if you go to an airport, there will be a different route for the international flights. There will be a different route for the staff people. There will be a different route for the domestic flights, and so on and so forth. If a VIP comes, they have a different route that they take. Okay, so I'm talking about airport. There will be different routes or different gates this API will open up. For example, there can be CRM API slash CRM API slash user. Now all the requests to a user database will come from here. Okay, then a user controller will come from here. API authentication, all the requests related to authentication will come through this gate. Okay, and then you map this gate, you map the whole journey of this gate from the middleware to the controller and see how that request goes. And then the route that you take to reach the model is the same route that you take back to come back to the client. So model will give you a response that will go to the controller, that will go to the middleware, and that will go again back to the client. Okay, so that is the purpose of routes. Now so these are the key components of your CRM app. Helps in routing and directing directing the request. Now there is one more. There are a few more components. Can you tell me what are they? We have discussed model, middleware, routes, and what else is there? There is something called as config. Config. Can you tell us, Sasan, what is config doing here? Sasan Kumar. Am I pronouncing your name correctly, Kumar? Sasan. Okay, Sasan, what is the config file doing? Can you tell me why do you need a config file? Why can't you just put it everywhere? Why do we need a config file? To reuse frequently used variables, hide some information? Uh, that is a good idea. Config is for hiding some information, and it is also like, think of it like this. You have a single place from where you can change the configuration of the building. Okay, for example, there is an electricity plug in the office building, or there's an electricity supply from the office building. All the important electricity supply will be sitting there. There will not be important plugs all over the building. The important plugs will be in an electricity room, maintenance room, and some guard will come and deal with it. Okay, so that's the design uh, that we keep in config. So it is basically configurations of our app. If you want to change tomorrow, if you want to change the DB tomorrow, we don't want to go at 10 places in our application and change the DB. We just want one place where we say, okay, now the DB is different and everything works as well. So this is just the configuration the whole app. And there's one last thing that we have, which is called as utils. Utils is like your washrooms in the building. Every washroom in a office building or in a mall, if you go to, will be exactly same. Okay, exactly same, and many people will be using the washroom. So you will have a different service or different bunch of people who will be managing washrooms. It will not happen that the operations teams will manage washroom for itself and marketing team will manage the washroom for itself. There will be a housekeeping service which will take care of the washrooms. Similarly, there will be utils which will contain all the constants like washrooms, or recently what happened in corona, that most of the office buildings, I'm talking about big office buildings have their own, what is it called, hand sanitizers. There were places all over the building, there were hand sanitizer put. Okay, now you need common hand sanitizer all over the place. So you will have a single person who will manage all the hand sanitizers in the building. Now what will happen if he decides to change the hand sanitizers? Only this person you have to tell that please change the hand sanitizers, and all the hand sanitizers in the building will be changed. So all those kinds of things will be stored in the utils. And this is the overall structure of our CRM app. If you understand this framework of solving problems, then it will be much easier for you to reason about why your code is not working. There will be places where your code will not working, and if you can derive this structure from first principles, you will be able to understand why it is not working. Or if somebody else gives you a new application, these structures are so common that you will be able to clearly reason about the application from these principles. Okay, any questions? Utility is also a module. Basically, utility will have constants and mostly constants and some object converters, something like utilities. Just like you have utilities in buildings, you will have utilities in the application. So that's the overall structure I wanted to spend some time on. You will see people, you will see people who can code up a whole website, a large scale website in 3 hours. Less than 3 hours, they will create the whole website for you. And the way they do it is basically to have these frameworks boiled down in them. So whenever a new application comes, they can easily solve the easily go to the framework and code it up. Like they will code it up so fast that you will so you will think that they are not even thinking about it, but or everything becomes muscle memory for them. Anyways, what type of tasks we do help or can do help of what type of task can we do help of utility? Utility, we can do all the tasks. It is like a single place where you have constants and different kinds of simple functions that you want to use. Okay, suppose somebody wants to use a washroom in a building, or somebody wants to use the hand sanitizer. Then there should be a single person who is responsible for all the hand sanitizers in the building. Okay, so if you go to a mall or some shopping mall, a big shopping mall which is well managed, you will see that every bathroom is standardized. You will not have differences between the bathrooms. Every bathroom will have same soap, same kind of structure, same kind of processes that they use to solve it. So that utility is there. That's why you have utilities here. It is like the maintenance of rest of the things. Okay, so those are the key parts of your CRM app. Okay, whenever you think about utilities, try to think about toilets, and then it will make sense to you what they are doing. They are not solving any business problem, but they are serving all other businesses in a manner which is not common. You don't know when people will go and have a washroom break, but whenever they want to do, they should have a single place or single type of place there where they can go. Like data formatting, file handling, and log management. Yeah, that is possible with util. You can have a log file which can be used across multiple functionalities. You should have a logger that is going to give you the errors that you want to generate. You can also have data formatting. Whenever data comes in, you can have a data formatting in the utils. uh, yeah, so all that is possible. Thank you, Ravindra. Now let's do the user activity part of the application. What are we going to do in the user activity? We are going to define three functions. User activity controller. I'm calling it user controller.js. And there will be three things that we will be doing with this user controller. First is find all. Second is find by ID. And third will be update. Those are the three. Those are the three functions that we have in our controller. Now, what is common across all three of them? Can you tell me? Who can perform these three functions? Find all. Do you understand what these are? Update is going to update a user. Find all is going to return all users. Return all users. Find by ID is going to find a user by ID. Find a user by ID. And update is going to update a particular user data. What is a typical kind of update that we want to do in our application? Or what is kind of the requirement update that we have? What is given in the requirements? If you remember, what is the kind of update that you can do? Update the user info. No, we are not going to provide updating the ID. ID cannot be updated. Ticket status is not something we update in the user controller. Ekta. It is something we can do. Hariharan is correct. The typical use case here is to update the user status. User status is going to be updated in the update functionality of the application of this user controller. Okay. So why don't we write these controllers and see how they work? Are you ready for some code? And before doing that, I'll again create a new folder because I think that is something that is going to help you a lot. You can think of the application across time. So yeah, I'll just come here and start a open folder, go to relevel, go to CRM app. Just give me 1 second. CRM app, CRM app. Inside this, I'll copy this folder and I'm going to paste it again. It will take some time. Hang on for that. And this folder I'm going to call let me rename this 8 dot building the CRM app user activity, and the date is 24th of December 2022. Enter. Okay, so this is good. Now let me open the folder. Let me close all the editors that are open. I don't like them. 7 is done. Now we are at 8. I'm going to commit something because I think commit is important. What am I sharing right now? Were you able to see the? Are you able to see my? Are you able to see the uh, image of me? Can you see my video? In the screen sharing, yes. Then it is correct. I don't want to share. Now I want to open. Just give me 1 second. What is it called? GitHub. GitHub desktop. In GitHub desktop, I'm going to started lecture 8. to main. Mhm. And push origin. Now, in this, I'm going to define another controller. I'm going to come to controller and I'm going to do user dot controller dot js. Okay, and in this controller, I'll have three functions: exports dot find all. It will be something like a async function that takes request and response, and that it does something. Uh, okay, that's one. And all. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Aryan. Then there will be another one which is exports. Is the size of the application? Is the size of the window okay to you? Do you want me to zoom a little or something? Just let me know. It is okay. Okay, fine. Okay. Find by ID. This will be async request comma response. Going to something like this. And then there will be a final one which is exports dot update. This is also an async function from request to response, going to this. These are the three functions that we want to write. Mm, Let me write down some data about this. I think that is going to help you. Uh, some blob of text. Controllers for the user resources. Controllers for the user resources. Uh, Only the user of type admin should be able to perform the op operations defined in the user controller. Okay. What are these operations? First is um, I don't like this params thing. This is going to fetch the list of all users. Okay. This, how do you write this one? There will be different operations that we need to do. User.find. Yeah. Okay. So there's one very simple way of writing it, which is to just find all the users, which is going to be try users is equal to await user dot find, and then uh, if there is an error, catch error. Const missing. Yes, sure, sure. I don't want to do it here. I'll just do it outside. I'll tell you why I want to do it outside. Catch error. If there is an error, then you are going to do console.log console.error error while fetching the users, and response.status 500 dot send this message. Message is going to be some internal error occurred. As this is done, we are going to do something which is, if this is not a catch block, then we are going to do response.status 200. It is up. So import the, I'm going to import the modules. Just give me a few minutes and send. We are going to send the users object, but we are going to perform some operations. So I'm going to write it like this for the time being. And now there are what else? What are the things that I need to import? What is the problem with this guy? Must be okay. This should be let. And this user guy should be no. Just come here and do const user is equal to require dot slash model slash user model. Okay, we have imported things. Now comes the interesting part, which is how do you convert a list of users into something interesting. Yeah. You want a function that can convert your user into a response. And let me write that function. Object converter. Converter. And I'm going to send the user object here, and it will be converted into a list of users. So let me write this object converter right now, and then I'll discuss something with you. Const object converter. It takes a list of users, and what it does, it sends you whatever you can reply. So it will take users, and then it is going to reply with user, let users result be a list of users. Users dot for each, go to each of the users. Users dot for each element. What you are going to do, user result dot push, and these are the following things. You don't want to push the password of any user, so you will push the name is equal to user dot name. User dot no, I have to define here user. For each user, you are going to push user dot name. You'll have user ID being pushed at user dot user ID. Other than that, you'll have email, which is pushed at user dot email. You will have user type. Your user type is equal to user dot user type, and you'll have user status, which is going to be user dot user status. And once you push everything, you can return the user result. That's all there is to the object converter. Save this. And now here is a question that I have for you. Is the controller file the right place to write this object converter? What do you think? Is the controller file the right place to write this converter? Oh, yeah, converter. Parag says no, Karan says no, Rajya says no. And why is that? So why do you think this is not the right place for this converter? Because my controller should only contain the controllers for my file. It should not have all this logic about converting an object. This is a logic that you will use across multiple applications. So what typically you want to do is you want to cut it from here, define a new file. Inside which folder will you define a file where you will keep this object converter? No, not middleware, utils. You will create inside utils a file called as object converter, object uh, converter.js, and inside this you will paste this folder file. And now what you can do is instead of calling this object converter, because the name of the file is object converter, you can call it exports dot user response. Okay, now the given a list of users, it is going to give you the response. But this comes under logic part, so it should be, it comes under logic part, but it is not exactly the logic. It is a logic that will be used across multiple converters, Aradhya. Okay, it is like a utility logic. Even the constants come under the logic of the folder, but these are used across multiple controllers. It is not something that only user controller will use. There can be other controllers which want to return the list of users. For example, there can be a ticket controller that wants to return the list of users. Then for that ticket controller you will have the same user response or object converter that you will need. Okay, so whenever you have, so you understand the use case of this object. You are taking you are taking an object from the model and sending it back to the user, and you want some functionality for that. So it's a good idea to keep that separate from your controller logic. So that's why I'm keeping it here. Now the user controller. So instead of calling this, I'm going to call it as, I'm going to first import const object con- converter, which is going to require something called as utils slash object converter. Once you have the object converter here, user controller. Once you have the object converter, you can directly do object converter dot user response of users. In utils, how users will be fetched, we need to import user model there. No, since you are sending the users, you don't have to import the user model. You import the user model only in the case where you define a new user. Here we are directly using user as a we are using user as just a JSON file. You can think of it as an object that is already created. If I were doing something like user dot a new user or something, like if I was creating a new user, then I'll need the user model. Okay, so now we have our find all logic, but this is to get all the users. There can be other logics that we need to write, and let me write that. So now there can be other logics depending on the request. What kind of search queries do you want to support with a find all operation? Do you want to, sir, my question, Suraj, repeat why create object convert. Why create object convert? I don't understand. Why do you want to? c- create object converter. Oh yeah, we are creating object converter because we are going to use it across multiple controllers. We are going to use it across multiple controllers, and it's a good idea to keep that code separate from the controller. It is like a utility that we want to keep separate from the controller. Okay, does that make sense, Suraj? We are going to use it across all four controllers. This controller, find all, find by id, update, find by id, find all, both of them we are going to use. Does that make sense, Suraj? Yeah. So therefore we are separating it. Yeah. Now I don't like this bunch of code here. So let me modularize this code. Uh, so what I'm going to do is, okay. So now I'm going to modularize this code and I'm going to put it inside a function. I'll call that function as fetch all. Relax. I'm going to do users is equal to await fetch all, and that's all. Now I'm going to define a function called as fetch all. Const fetch all. Now this is an important point. Then now many of you might be thinking, why don't we put this function inside the converter and inside the utils? Yeah. Uh, no, you don't need to send a user for fetch all. You just fetch everything. Okay. So what you need, oh, users. You have to call it users. Users dot is equal to fetch all, and this is the function, which is a simple function. Uh, it goes from nothing. It takes nothing as input, and it replies with has this thing, and it is let users is await user dot find. Once await happens, it is going to return users. Okay. This is fetch all function. This is one kind of find operation that you can perform on your data. There are different kinds of find operations that you can perform, but this is one of them. Now, what I'm going to do is uh, I'll have to send the response. Just give me 1 second. I'll need the response variable. So fetch all response. Result is not needed. So yeah, good. Now, one thing I can do is I can stop here and then get this get this find all operation working. Let's look at the postman and see if this is working out. Okay, so I'll just go to routes and I'll go to user routes, and in this user routes I'm going to say I have users, and for this I'm going to write uh, first I'll need the user converter. So take this and call this as const user controller is equal to require not controllers slash user controller. Now I'm going to come here and have this in the next line, and in the next line I'll have user controller dot find all. Okay, now I'm going to save this, and I need to log in as the, since I logged in last night, so I don't have to log in. But let's see. I'll have to log in as the admin and then fetch the values. User is missing. Okay. So now I'm going to go to Postman. Postman. Hmm. So I copy this from here and put it here. Okay. Now this is the user's request. In its header, I have the access token of the admin. And if I just come here and send it, I have to open, I have to start the, so I'll come here and start the app. No, I have to go to CD, date, building CRM app, user activity. I come here and do node space app.js and admin got present. Now, since admin is present, I should be able to access all the users from there. Now I come here and send this requires admin role. Okay, so maybe check this one. Header, send this requires admin role. Okay, let me go to the admin sign in. Body contains admin and this. Let me send this. I have signed in and this is my access token. Once sorry, uh, I take this access token, Control C, go to this access token, uh, Control A, Control V. Now the access token is returned. Now I can just do send. And I got the list of all the users. You see, I got the list of all the users. Very simple. Once you understand the framework, it is not a difficult thing. Now, let's move forward. Now, what we want to do next uh, is there only one user in DB, right? There are two users, you can see them. There are two users in the, one is the admin Anshul and second is the customer Anshul, Arnav. These are the two users. Right now, there are two users. Now, let's talk about this concept called as functional decomposition. And this is one kind of fetch that you can perform on your data. But there are other fetches that you can also perform. Okay. What are those kinds of fetches that you can perform? Can you give me some ideas like what all kinds of fetch that the admin will require? One is to fetch all the users, but sometimes the admin don't want to fetch all the users. It wants to fetch particular users. You see, sometimes you do search queries on created today. That can be a good idea. Yeah, that can be a good idea. We'll see some of them. Yeah. What else you can see? We should be able to search based on the status of the users. Suppose admin is there and he wants to find yeah particular status. We should be able to search for a particular status. We should be search for a particular type. What are all the engineers in the system? What are all the admins in the system? And we should be also able to search based on the name. If I give you the name of a person, you should be able to search him on the database. So those are the three. Based on user ID. User ID we will do in find by ID. When we do find by ID, we'll search for a particular user using the user ID. I don't want to do it here. I want this is like a wholesale search based on some query. Okay. Now I'm going to talk about something now. Let me see the time right now. Okay, I have 15 minutes, so I'll just complete this find all, and then once we come back, we'll complete the other two functions, update and find by ID. Okay. Mhm. So there are three parameters that I'm looking for. One is the user, of course. One is the users. Second is let user type request. What is the user type request? It is request dot query dot user type. Why am I writing like this? Why cannot I just write request dot body dot user type? Why am I writing it as query dot user type? Let user status request. We will pass it in the URL, the query. Yeah, but why? Why do you want to pass it? Why don't you send it in the body? Why are you passing it as the query in there? Why can't I do request dot body to get this thing? Forget we are unable to pass. That is true. Uh, Let me see if we are able to pass and get. I'm not sure. But much more important point is suppose this is a gate, then we can pass a body. That's not a problem. We can send a body in the get operation. That is not a problem. The key point is there is an intention behind the query. Query says that I'm going to use the query for a particular purpose. I'm going to find something in my database. Uh, I mean, that is true. That is, we want to reduce the overhead. But much more important point here is, Ekta, is that we want to be clear in our intentions. We should not have hidden intentions. And the clarity of intention is when I say query, I'm talking about something which is going to be found from the database. So when so it is similar to the query that you send for uh, SQL. SQL queries, when you send it in the query parameter. So there is a different acting as a filter. Acting as a filter is a good idea. Yeah, correct. That's a very good way of putting it. Query is what puts a filter on your find operation, get operation. Okay, so always use query when you want to uh, fetch something important. Fetch something like where condition. Yes, like where condition. This is exactly the where condition where name is this, where type is this, or where user status is follows. So these are the three types of queries that you can have. And depending on what all user has passed, you can decide what you are going to do. So if username request, if the username is given, uh, then you can do users is equal to await fetch by fetch by username. Fetch by name, I'll just write it as name, and I'll send user name request. This is one function that I have to write. If username is not given, then what else can be given? If the user type user type is given and user status is given, then you are going to do users is equal to await fetch by type and status. So you'll send user request status. You'll send type first, user type, and you'll send user status, user status request. And always you have to send the response so that you can do the catch block, response. Okay, this is the second type of function that you can write. Then there can also be other functions where only the status or only the type is given. So else if only user type request is given. If only user type request is given, then you can do users is equal to await fetch by, and here you are going to send user type request comma response. There will also be else if user else if user. What is the fourth one you can write here? You have done username, you have done user type and user status, you have done user type alone. What is the fourth you can have? Can you see the pattern here? There will be fourth one. I'm going to talk about this. And then, yes, else if there is nothing given, you can send the last one, which is fetch everything if nothing is given out of these. So this is based on the query that you need. Okay. Now here you can have user status request, and here you can do users is equal to await fetch by status. You can send user status request comma response. Okay, those are the functions that you have. No, this is not from where response come. Response is here. Response is here. Vivek, why are you so late to the class? I have discussed something very important. Now it will not make sense to you. Yeah, response is coming from here. So these are all the patterns that we have. Uh, I have discussed fetch all with you. I'm going to do other fetch operations and your internet connection problem. Why don't you do something about your internet, Vivek? What is the problem? Are you staying in a very small town or something? Do me a favor next time, before coming to the Monday's class, watch the recording for this lecture. It will help you a lot in understanding what is going on in the class. Okay. So make sure you go home. I mean, whenever you have time, watch the lecture for today's class. I have discussed something important. I discussed architecture of the whole app today. And then I started discussing this. Can you explain this function? Find all in detail. Uh, Yes, yes, I'm going to discuss. Don't worry about this fetch by name, fetch by. I hope you understand how these five functions will work, Nayan. Fetch by name and status, fetch by type, fetch by status, fetch all. Do you understand these functions? You can write them. Okay. So basically, what this is doing is it is looking at three things. If the query contains fetch is mongoose method, no, fetch is the method that I'm writing here. Fetch is like this method I'm writing. Fetch all is the method that I have written, which is going to call the model in turn. Okay. It is going to call the model and get the data. I could have written this code inside this function, but then this function will be like 100 lines long and you will not understand anything about it. But right now it's very simple function. It says, if you give me the name, I'm going to fetch the person by the name. If you give me the type and the status, I'm going to pass those type and status and fetch the person. If you give me just type, I'm going to find all the people with that type. If you give me status, I'm going to find all the people with that status. Otherwise, I'm going to find all the people that are there in the database. You see that? Oh, Nayan, do you see that? Yes. Okay. So I have 4 or 5 minutes. Let me write few of these functions. I'm going to paste a lot of code in them because I think they are very intuitive. Shouldn't we check second condition first? Uh, I think if name is given, then priority should be on the name. I mean, your mileage might differ on this, but for me, name is a much shorter category. If somebody gives you the name, then he mean business. Okay. So name is the smallest category. Then you have name and status. Both of them are a little bigger category. Then type is a little bigger, and then the status is the biggest of them. So therefore, I'm doing it like this. Okay. So now we have fetch all. We can have const fetch by name. This is going to be a async function which will ask for the name and the response. Okay. Uh, Given a name, find the users with that name. So I'm going to define let users, and then I'm going to paste some code, which is this code is not doing anything. It is, let me write this name as user name request. Okay. So it will find anyone whose username is the given username. And if it is giving an error, it will give an error. Otherwise, it will return the users. Okay. Return users. Is this function making sense to you that I have pasted? I don't want to write the same code, so I have pasted it. Yeah. Vivek, just sit tight for a few minutes, and maybe after the break, when I start the next functions, it will start making sense to you. I know many of the things are not making sense to you right now. I mean, they should not be making sense because we have discussed a lot of theory before. But just give me some time. Once we are back from the break, I'll start on a new function, and I'll probably give you an introduction one more time, uh, and that is going to make it easier for you. In this, I'll have user type request and user status request and response, and this will also be let users, and then there will be a try block, which is again very similar to the previous try block, but there will be some changes in the catch block. Uh, and then you write that some internal, you are always saying some internal error occurred, but on the console you are writing that these status and these people are I'm not able to fetch, and then you can return users, and this is user status. Okay, just give me 1 second. uh, this should be equal, and there should be arrow here. We need to write async. That is correct. Async. Yeah, sure. So async fetch this. There will also be const fetch by type. It is going to be async. This will take user type request, and it will have a response. All you need to do is uh, there will be a type request that you will have, which is again the same. Can you see? Can you see what part of this will change? Out of these two lines, which line will stay and which line will go? When you are talking about the type part, the status will be removed. You will only have the type. So let users, and then you'll have this, and then we'll return users. Okay. So this is async find user type, and then there will be one more function which will be const fetch by status, which will be async, and it will take user status request. We'll have a response. We'll have an arrow function, and let me copy this code as well. Control C. If I would have written all this code in that bigger function, many of you would have cried the tears of blood. But now that is simple. You understand what each function is doing. Why are we writing this long code? Satyendra, because we want to have proper error logging on our function, on our uh, we are writing this long code because we want to have proper error logging and proper status send back to the thing. Let me share my code. Okay, please share, Satyendra. I think if you have written a shorter code, that will be better. But yeah. I'm waiting for Sten to share his code. Uh, so this is how you can write the find all function, and I'm going to commit this changes by the time Satyendra is sending his code. Um, Added find all control. Okay. So I'm going to commit this change and let me see what Satyendra has asked. Pointed out, pick this out, answer that out, and stop sharing. And let me do zoom in on this. Uh, Request.query. Uh, no, Satyendra. There are a couple of problems with this code. I mean, it's good, but the problem is, uh, for example, there are a bunch of problems. Let me, it will, yeah, it will, no, we need to object converter. It will handle. Yeah. So for example, in your code, you are sending the user passwords along with the users. First of all, that. So then can you see that when somebody asks for a user, admin will have access to the user password suddenly. Do you see that? So then with this code, admin will have access to the user passwords. See line 11. Line 11. Okay, you are removing the password. Okay, that's okay. Sorry. Okay, that is there, and also you are not giving the exact query errors. So for example, if there was an error for a if there was an error for a particular use case, you are not giving that. uh, okay, so those are a couple of problems with this code. It might work, but yeah, people can send all kinds of queries now. They can send a query where they are looking for all the users which are created today. I mean, you don't want to expose that much functionality on your data set. That is another thing that is wrong with this design. It opens up the gateway for any query that you want to send. That might be something you might be asking for, but our test case asks for particular queries and we want to do particular solutions for them. Most of the code is written so that you have better return. This is protected to admin, right? But admin is also not the owner of the whole database. Okay, you want to allow only, so the function that you have in this design is need to know basis. Everyone should, even if he is admin, he should know. So there is something called as need to know. You need to give as little access to somebody, no matter how big that person is, how much trust you have in that person. You want to give as little access to that person as possible. Okay, therefore you don't allow a random query to be run on your data set from the admin. But if there are 10 query parameters, then how many functions will, I mean, that is the whole point, Satyendra. That is the whole point. We are not going to allow the admin to have random queries. He will not be having thousands of queries on our database. That is the functionality. Because what if the admin doesn't know about DynamoDB and he runs a query, because he has the power, he runs a query that stops your production data set, database itself. It can easily happen that the production load can be increased by a random query. Suppose I write a query which is not properly indexed, then the whole production data set can be database can be down for a few minutes or few hours if that's the case. Okay, you want a lot of control on your database. You can write this code, but you want a lot of control over your database. You don't want to expose your database to anyone outside the person who is developing the software. Okay, so then, so therefore, and also the other thing is, yeah, you want to write proper error messages for each of the query. So you have easier time debugging the code. If tomorrow there is a problem in the code, you should have an idea about what was the query about, what were the two parameters which it hit, and which function it was going through. If you just directly expose the DynamoDB to the admin, you will not be having access to that part of the problem. Okay. So, anyways, that's a very good question. I liked it, Satyendra, but I think my point is clear now. Okay, so now we'll take a short break. We'll come back at 41, 11:41, 11:41 p.m. We'll come back and see you till then. Okay, break till 11:41. I'm going to mute. Hello students, let me open my camera. Are you back? You are exact on time. Just let me know if you're back. Yes, back, back, back. Make some noise. Okay, so for those of you who have joined late, I understand this is Saturday and sometimes it is difficult to join on time. But I just want you to understand that whatever reason you have for joining late, make sure it is more important to you than missing like half of my lecture. Okay. If that is not the case, make sure you join the lecture on time. Okay. So for people like Vivek who have joined late, I'm going to discuss something called as the architecture of the application. And this will not be, again, this will not be the full coverage of the topic that I did before break, but I'll again give you some basic hints about it. So here is the idea. You have something called as CRM app. Think of it like a big building. Okay, Vivek? Think of it like a big office building. If you have ever been to an office building, think of it like that. Now, there are different organizations or different groups of people who will take care of different parts of the app. There will be something called as models, which is your database, or think of them as your rooms. Okay, think of them as the rooms or people who live in the thing in the building. Okay, it is a place where people can live in the building. It's like an office. That's what model is. Controller is how do you control the access to that room? Who goes into the room and what do they get from that room? What all can you get from that room and what you can do inside the room? For example, a person who is like the CEO can go to the CEO's office and sit there and work there and use the computer and do all sorts of things. But if there is something like a junior intern, uh, he cannot enter into the CEO's office. So there is model which contains the database for your application, and there are controllers which actually deal with the model. And then the idea is each controller, there will be multiple controllers, and they might have similar services. I mean, they might be asking for same kind of services across their core logic. For example, think of security guards. Okay. Now, the CEO and the CTO and the CFO, all of them will not have their own security guards. All of them need security guards on their office, but all of them will not have their own security guards. There will be a security service which is going to provide security guards to all three of them. Does that make sense? There will be a base service, which is base organization, which is going to provide the security for the whole building. And then other operations in the building can use that service. Does that make sense, Vivek? Think of the security guard. So now the idea is this security guard. So similar to security guard, we have something called as middleware. Middleware. Okay, these are the services which are provided to multiple controllers in the application and from a central position. And then once you have controllers and middleware and model, there is something that guides the path from the user, the client, to the model. And that path is guided by the routes. Route is going to decide what will be the path from the gate of the. So what will happen is there will be an application called as localhost 3000, and that localhost 3000 will have different API gateways. which can so different places from where the request can come. And what router does is router decides the path from the request to the controller through the middleware, and then the path back to the request. Okay, this is what the router does. And then there are auxiliary or helper services like uh, config service, which is going to decide the configuration, and you have utilities, which is going to have some utility services related to the app. So that's how the whole app is built. Okay, Vivek? And we use this framework of thinking about an app because this helps us in building apps quickly. If you remember this framework, you can build a app maybe in 3 hours or less. Okay. If you don't have this framework in mind, then everything will become very difficult to difficult to deal with. So Vivek, this is a short introduction so that the next 1 hour makes sense to you. But if this still does not make sense, try to go back to the lecture and watch the initial 20-30 minutes of the lecture, and then it will make much more sense. Okay? Can I get some response? Vivek, are you connected? Controller, sir. Controller is the one who controls the model. Controller is the one who controls the model. It is the logic of the application. Okay? Try to watch the initial part one more time. And if you have any questions, you can come back to me again and we'll discuss this. This is important. So don't worry if it takes some time to get, but it's important. Okay. So this is fetch by status, fetch by type, fetch by. So all these functions are simple. Same function. They are just a copy of each other. Okay. But we just want to build some kind of logic into these. So we have created that. Now let's talk. Let's spend some time fetching different people by different names and so on, so that we know how this works. So for that, I'm going to open Postman, and this is the users, and in this I'll send some query parameter. I'll send query username. Okay, so I'll send user name. Okay, sorry, this should just be just name. I'll send the name. Uh, Getting user. Sir, fetching is the function which fetches the data from the model. Fetching is the name that I have given to these functions. All they do is they have some kind of query. They fetch the value. If the value is given, then it returns it. Otherwise, it throws an error and gives some error message. Okay, that's what fetches. This is the model of fetch function. You can have different kinds of fetch function. For example, you can have a fetch function which looks at the username and then returns the username, so on and so forth. I don't like this name. I will prefer it to be username. Okay, uh, I can call it name. Name is okay. User status and user type is good, but name should be name. Okay. So now I'll go to Postman and I'll say the name is Anshul. Okay. And I should ideally get, so this is how the query comes up. This is how the query comes up. Name is equal to Anshul. And if I send this, how it works, can you show? How it works can show? Yeah, I'm going to show it. So this is where I'm sending a query which says go to localhost 3000 in CRM app API user, and the name should be Anshul. So I'm sending the name. I send it and I receive the data point for uh, why am I getting both of them? Let me see. Just give me 1 second. Uh, Name is given. Return the name. Fetch by name. Requested name. Uh, Let me come here and do console.log um, request dot query query. Save this. And again to the postman thing. Send it. I got it. I got it. You know why it is causing this problem? Because I have not run the new code. It is still running the old code. So I have to go here and control C this and run the Node.js app again. And this time, if I go to the params and send Anshul, it should return me Anshul alone. Node is installed. Why is it returning both of them? Just give me 1 second. Let me check. Just give me 1 second. I'm getting a call. Both names are Anshul, but first is a small case. So let me check. I have come here and I'll just do um, just come here and console.log. I'll do user name request, comma request dot query. I save this and control C this and run the node again. I go to the postman and again send the query, and I'm getting both the names. Let me check. It said Anshul is coming, so probably it is checking both of them. So it is checking name, username is, oh, I got it. This should be name. Where name is username request. Save it and go to the link. Go see and then again go to the node postman and run this one more time. And this time it is coming correctly. So I was not writing it as I was writing it as username, so it was correcting both of them. Anyways, so this is username Anshul. Similarly, I can send something called as user type. If I send user type, I can send a user type, say customer, and I'm going to get the customer. This. I'm getting customer. If I say admin, I should, sorry, admin, I should get the admin, and I'm getting the admin. So all the codes are working fine. This is how you can test your app. Now I'm going to tell you how a particular field worked. Okay, name Anshul. Okay, so let me show it. No, no, not this one. Just click on this. Let me show it to you how this code is working. So I'll close this. And so first of all, it is started from the route. So first I'll go to the user routes. And I said this API was called CRM API users. This API went through verifying of token and verifying that whoever is calling this API is admin. So I looked at my token. I'm sending the token in this. If you look at the header, there is something called as x-axis token, which is the token for the admin. So first you send to this, look at this URI, CRM API users. I'm sending the request to this gateway. And on this gateway, I'm sending this token. Once this token is sent, I'm able to check that I'm talking about the admin. Okay. So I can go to the JAuth and okay, I can show it to you. Just give me 1 second. So it comes here and it says, no, I'll paste it. So I'll go to the JWT util. No, what is middleware? I'll go to the middleware in JWT, and in this, I'm going to write. Uh, I'm going to write that console.log user token verified. Uh, the user is just like recorded.id, recorded.user ID. So I'm going to paste this, and then I'm going to come here and I'm going to say um, log found out that the user is admin. Just give me 1 second. Somebody is at my door. Yeah. So I was talking about. I was just writing some comments so you know that found out that the user is admin in the middleware. In the middleware is admin. Once you found out that the user is an admin, you go to the controller and say request received at the controller console.log uh, request arrived at the user controller find all, and then once it is here, what we can do is uh, console.log the query is request.query. Okay, so now you will understand the overall flow of this app. So I'll just start the app again, and I'm going to send the again, same query again. I'm going to send Anshul as name, send it, and uh, I received the query. Now I'm going to come here. The token verified the user is admin. First we verify that the user is admin. Found that no, first we verify that the token is correct. It is the user. Okay, first you verify the token. Second, you found out the user is admin in the middleware. Yeah, middleware is admin. Vivek, you cannot understand each piece of code this way. It will not work out that way. You have to understand the framework and then you can understand the code. Okay. Each line of code, if you go about learning, you will not be able to understand anything in the code. Think of it like this. Think of it like this. First, the query comes. Think of it like this. Suppose I have written a paragraph or a sentence in a book. If you try to read each word with a alphabet, if you read the words at the alphabet level, you will not be able to understand the sentence. You will only be stuck to the alphabets. But if you understand the overall architecture, then you can piece up the code very easily. Okay. So don't worry about the code right now. First, we come to the middleware, which is the verify token. Salesforce is famous specifically for CRM kind of application. Yes, that is true, Ankit. Salesforce is very famous for CRM applications. It is the best CRM application. Then found out that the user is admin in the middleware is admin. Then you found out that the user who is calling this app is admin. Then request arrived at the user controller find out. After that, the request goes to the find all admin, find all controller. In find all controller, you have a query which says name should be Anshul. So I am trying to find all the users whose name is Anshul. Then I go to this if condition which fetches all the user with the name Anshul. Then I go to fetch by name function, which is going to call the user model and find all the users whose name field is equal to the name that I have passed, and that user is returned. Okay, Karan, is the flow clear to you? What does Salesforce developer does? Salesforce developer, I'm not sure. Salesforce developer develops on top of the Salesforce platform. I used to be a Salesforce developer. Oh, nice. Were you in operations or were you in the development of this? I mean, how does that work, Archit? Do you want to explain? Admin plus dev. Okay, yeah, that's what it is. Anyways, I'm going to remove the comments now. SFDC has its own, Salesforce developer has its own environment and language. Yeah, they provide you some kind of customization on top of the platform that you have. Okay. I'm going to remove these lines of code. I don't want them. Tool, yeah, and I'll have to remove this also. Uh, is it good to become? That's something you can ask Archit. I'm not sure. We'll see. And run the code again. Now the code is working fine. Let's look at the other kind of application, which is to fetch a request to find somebody. Let me go to the controller. So we have written a function. Let me put these functions into play. This is the first main function, which is find all. Then the second main function is find by ID. Given a request ID. Yes. Okay. Nice, Archit. Uh, so how do you find something by request ID? All you need to do is const user ID request is equal to request dot param. This time you are looking at params, and I'm going to explain you why you are looking at params. What is params and why you are looking at it. Const user is equal to await uh, user dot find user dot find. We can use try catch here as well, just to keep it consistent. Just to keep it consistent, I will try user try user is equal to await user dot find. Then you can do user ID is equal to user ID request. Okay, and if this runs through, if this is running through, that is good. If there is an error, catch error. If there is an error, you can write response dot status. There's an error. Uh, just give me 1 second. Status 500, and you can send a message. The message says internal server error. That is one thing. And in typical businesses, you also write these strings in the constants. You don't write in them all over the place. You keep them in a constant and send it across. But I'm writing it here just to, I mean, it's okay. I'm just writing it here. Ideally, you should write it in the constants of util. Now this is done. Then what you are going to do is, if user is present, and if user is present, then we can do response dot status 200 dot send object converter dot user response dot user. If this is not the case, else you can do response dot status. In catch block, no need to use return. Uh, in catch block, I don't think so. Let me see if I've used it before. No, it's not. It's not needed. No need to write catch block return. Okay. Now here you can write 200. Let me see if let me send an error message and see if it is working. Uh, Send. If there is no one, then you can send a message. And I'm writing the code for find by ID, Vivek. If you give me an ID of a user, if you give me the ID of a user, I should be able to return his document. That is what I'm doing. And for doing that, I'm first finding the person with the ID, and then if there is error, I'm saying error. And otherwise, what I'm saying is uh, the status is this, and the response is this. Okay, Vivek, does that make sense? Yeah. And status is 200 and send is a message. You're going to send a message which says user with this ID, and you can write the ID as well. User tick, user with ID, dollar, what is the ID? User request ID is not present. Okay, we are going to test this, and that's all there is to find by ID function. So I'm going to test this on my application. I'm going to go here. And how do I send a single parent? How do I single parent? All I need to do is, instead of writing like this, I can write the name itself. I can just write, I'm looking for. How do I send params here? I can just write here. I can write, I'm looking for Anshul, or I'm looking for say Vivek. Okay. If I write like this, no, cancel and send. Is the error? Cannot get, no, cannot get to this. Send. No. Oh, did I start? Oh, I have to do that. Just give me 1 second. Uh, I have to go to the routes, and I have to create a route for this also. So I'll just create app.get, and route is uh, if the route is CRM slash API slash users slash colon user ID. Given a user ID, I should be able to find the user. But what I'm going to do is, first I'll check auth jwt dot verify token. I'm going to verify the token, and then auth jwt dot is admin. I'm going to verify that the current guy is the admin, and then I'm going to call user controller dot find by ID, and that's all I need to do. Now, find by ID is going to find this user with the ID, and I save this, and I go back to the query, and this time I just write Vivek. See, no, I'm going to run that again. Control C and run again. Post Moon I should install, I guess. That's a good idea. And here I'm going to search for Vivek, send. and it says uh, it did not find Vivek. But if I do colon, let me do colon send. No, this is not. Sure. No, no, no. Just give me 1 second. Let me do Anshul first. Let me do Anshul. Is the Anshul the user ID? Let me check. What is the user ID? No, it's the user 009. Anshul 009 is the user ID. Just give me 1 second. Anshul 009. Parent son. And so user ID is working fine. The only thing that is not working is the message. So I'm going to come here and go to controller, and in here, if user dot length is greater than 0, then do this, otherwise do that. And now I come here and run something other than until 0 to 9. And if I run this, I should get a no. I have to run the code again. Control C, run the node again, and I come to the app, search for Anshul, and it says the user with this ID, Anshul is not present. Okay. If I do Anshul 009, it is going to send that. Now you understand the difference between this way of fetching user and that way of fetching user? Query way of fetching. Do you understand the difference between query and params, students? This way of writing code to get a user and that way of writing code which I wrote earlier. For example, if I can do the same thing by doing query on say name as query name, and the name is going to be Anshul. If I do the same thing, I'll get the same result, but there's a difference between the two. Here I am querying a particular variable, and here I am changing the route that you go through. Here I am saying go through the route Anshul 009. This is a separate route that you are going to take. Okay, and once you take this route, you are going to hit a model which contains this user. Okay, so let me talk about this. If there is a query, so the query versus params. Okay, there are two ways of calling the same thing. One is to call localhost colon 3000 API. I'll just call it CRM slash API slash users slash question mark name, or maybe I'll just do user ID. This is an example, user ID equal to Anshul. Either I can do this, Anshul 009, or I can directly say localhost 3000 CRM API users slash Anshul 009. Okay. So these are two different ways of doing the same thing. But this is preferred in the case you are searching on the primary key. If you are searching on the user ID, it's a good idea to create a different route for each one of them. This is similar to saying, if you enter a building, you say, I want to meet the person's CEO. I want to meet the CEO. Then you have a proper route to take. Okay. But if you go to the building and you say, I want to meet all the people in the what error showing? Can you explain? Yes, there was no error. There was no error. There was coding mistake that I did, Vivek. Just understand this query and params first, and then I'll explain that. So there is another way. I can say I want to meet all the people in Department of Physics. Suppose I'm going to a college and I'm saying I want to meet everyone in the Department of Physics. Then it is a query that you run. That is going to tell you the route. That is going to tell you the address of all the people in the physics department. Okay. Here you say I just want to go and meet the CEO. It is a single route that you take. It is typically a single document that you reply with. Here you have a bunch of documents that you reply with. Okay. Now coming to the error that I was facing, Vivek, the error was this, that I was not when I was creating the user field. Uh, when I was creating the user field, I was this was the error. I was just looking for the user. If the user was not null, I was returning the user. Ideally, what I should do is user.length greater than 0. When user length is greater than 0, then I get a user reply. And what I say, this ID, when yeah, say, when the length of users that are returned by the database is 0, then I say that user is not present. Otherwise, I say that user is present. That's what this code is all about. Okay. Didn't get the logic behind this. Vivek, do you want to unmute yourself for some time? I think that will be a easier way to deal with this problem. Uh, hmm.
Yes, sir. Hi.
Yes.
Hello. Sir.
Yeah. Tell me.
Yeah. Sir, I didn't get how you return the user dot greater than zero user dot line. Then, sir.
You understand what user is?
Yeah, I understand.
What is
Length.
that?
What is the logic behind the length? Length. Why we are taking? Suppose you are searching my name, user ID. Then what is the logic? Length. And
What is this user.find return? Do you know?
yeah,
User.find.
yeah, I know.
What does it return?
Return of user ID.
No, it is not going to return a user ID. It is going
Um,
to
in
return,
the user ID,
huh?
finding user ID.
No, 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 no. This user.find is going to find all the documents in the user model whose user ID is this. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
So all the users in the user model whose user ID is user ID request, you give me them in a list.
Okay, sir.
Now, once you have that list, either the length of the list is going to be 0 or it will be greater than 0. Does that make sense?
No, no, no. I that not makes sense for me.
That is not making sense.
Yes.
What if there are no users and I'm returning a list of users with the given ID? What will the list contain in that case?
It returns error zero
No, it returns an empty list.
in empty. Yeah.
And
Then,
if it is returning the empty list, I'm saying that the user with given user ID is not present.
okay. And sir, whenever you are finding my Vivek user ID, then why it's not showing anything, and it's not showing user is not in
No,
this ID.
it previously I have written it like this. Previously I had written it like user. If user then this, otherwise this, which is the wrong way of doing it. It should be user.length greater than 0. Now it is showing. I can show it to you. Just give me 1 second. Control C and run the app, and I can go back to the postman. And here, if I say I'm looking for Vivek, since Vivek is not present in the database, if I come here and send this, it is going to say the user with the ID Vivek is not present. Okay, does
Okay,
that make sense?
okay.
Okay. Hmm. I'm not able to. Any other questions, Vivek? Are you able to follow?
Yeah, sometimes follow when something follow.
You are able to follow some things. Okay, no worries. Try to watch the lecture for today again. That
Yeah,
is going. That is something that I've been iterating over again and again. because I've discussed how to think about these problems. And
Yeah,
maybe I'll discuss the
sorry for
last
that.
part and then I'll discuss how to think about this problem one more time. Okay?
Yeah, I'm sorry for that.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. Sure. Okay, Vivek. Now let's talk about the last part of this, which is the updation of the object, and then I'm going to share a story with you, basically an experiment that was run, and that will help you understand how to think about programming for these kind of questions. Okay. User will contain an array. User will contain an array. Yeah, that is correct. For user ID search, it will only return a single document. Always right. Yes. So list length will always. Yes, that is true, Arnav. You will either have one document or two documents. One document or zero. That is true, Arnav. So you can actually set it up as a single document. So you can do find one also. I'm not doing that, but if you want to upgrade the app, you can do that. That's completely fine. You can do find one instead of find. Okay. Now, now let's talk about the update. Update is also going to be a simple function. It will be const user ID request request dot parents dot user ID. Given a user ID, just let me see. Given a user ID, we're going to try. And the only update that I'm going to provide in this case is uh, the admin should be able to update the status of the user. Nothing other than that should be provided to the admin. So I'm going to do const user is equal to await user dot find one and update find one and update, and this is going to find a user with the user ID of user dot id request, and then it is going to update the user status with the request dot body dot user status. Whatever status the admin sends us, we are going to update the status of the user with that. That's the only thing I'm providing. And after this, I'm going to do exec. What is that? What does that do? What does exec do? Does anyone know? What does exec do? This is going to execute the query. So you have to write that after the find and update operation. Okay. So find and update, you have to write exec. And then you can do response dot status 1000. If it runs, you can do, and then you can send a message. Send a message which says user record has been updated successfully. If it returns an error, which is going to be the catch block, then the first thing is to console dot error uh, error while updating the record, and you are going to do error dot message, sending an error message, response dot status 500 dot send. You are going to send a message, and that message is going to be some internal error occurred. Okay, that's all there is to the update operation. What is the function for object converter utility? What is the function of object converter utility? That this is the function. It is going to give this utility user response. I know I've discussed that in the class, but basically I will repeat it. So what happens is user response is getting converted a lot of times, and you don't want to write that function only in this controller. That is something that can be used by multiple controllers. Unlike console.error is the way you write errors on your console. There are different ways of writing things to your console. One is console.log, other is console.error. I'm going to share the update part in few minutes, but let me answer the Arnab's question first. So Arnab, the thing is, most of these functions that you are seeing, fetch all, fetch name, fetch type and status, fetch by type, fetch by status, these functions are going to be used only by these controllers. Nobody else is going to use them. So it makes sense to add these functions into your controller file. But if you look at this function of converting the user, where is that? Fetch by status? No. If you look at this function, object converter user response, this is something that you can do across multiple controller. If there is a controller for a if there is a controller for a ticket, also you can have this function object converter. Okay, so all kinds of object converter I will group up in a utility called as object converter. That's why we have an object converter utility. There will be a ticket converter sometime, so we'll put it in the object converter again. Does that make sense, Arnav? We don't want to corrupt our code, or we don't want to mess up our code for controller, so we are putting it in the object converter. Yeah, that is true, Arnav. It is just extraction of the required fields into this. So tomorrow, if you want to tomorrow, if you want to reduce some of the fields or change some of the fields, you can do it from here. One thing that some of you might be saying, that we only thing that we are reducing is the created and updated date and the password. Why don't we remove that directly? But what can happen is, suppose a field is not, since it is a schema less, suppose the schema changes tomorrow and some extra fields are added, then those fields are also going to be passed on to the user. So it's not a good idea. Always have a check on what you are sending to the user. That is the function of user response. Okay, Arnav? All these functions you have to use in code, such as find all is provided by the Mongoose. Yes, these are provided by Mongoose. Can't we have used a Mongoose projection? Yes, you can use that. You can use that, but I typically like it to be written explicitly instead of projection. Okay. I don't know. I want a place where I can see all the responses that I am sending. So tomorrow there can be a developer who want to see what are the kinds of responses that I am sending. He will not go and see the Mongoose projections as such. Somebody who is dealing with the client side of this code would not want to look at the Mongoose projection. He will just look at this response and understand what he's getting. What need to update in the function, it will be done by admin or engineer further. No, it will be done by it will be done by the admin. Only admin have access to these functions, which are find all, find by id and update. Okay, and only thing that gets updated is the status. Sometimes the admin wants to convert uh, a pending status to approved, and sometimes it want to convert it to decline. So all that has to be done from here. Okay, Parag? I'm going to talk about what is the use of update function. Is that the question? Yeah, update function. You remember the use case for update? Where as soon as a new engineer or admin is added, exec is just executing this query, find one and update. It does not execute on itself, so you have to write exec. Okay. Can you consider? Can we consider the CRM as a project on our and on our resume? Yes, definitely, Ankit. You can consider this as a project, and even better, you can update this to multiple usability, and you can write in that. No, no, you answered already. It's not about update. No, Parag is correct. Uh, yes, that is correct. There's a question by Karan Korea who want to understand why this update part is working. So the thing about it is, there was a requirement when a new engineer or uh, yeah, no worries, Karan. Um when a new engineer or a admin comes into the system, it is not automatically going to get a uh, let me show you the code for that as well. So if I go to authentication controller and I sign up, so when a new admin or engineer comes up, I set its status as pending, and the old admin has the power of converting this pending to approved, okay, or to rejected. These are three states of status. Yes, exactly. Ankit, this is exactly the kind of work you will do on freelance. When you do freelance, this is the kind of work you will be doing. That is true. Okay. So we want a service that can convert this pending into approved. And that is exactly what this controller is doing here. It is taking a request ID and then it is converting the status to whatever status the admin is sending. I'm going to show it to you in the code in just few minutes. Let me check the time. I have time. So I'll create a new engineer, show that it is going to be pending, and then I'm going to show that I can approve that pending request. So I'll come here and there will be a sign up button. In the body, I'm going to say there is a new user and I would like to name him as Karan. His ID is Karan 220. I wanted to write it as 420, but I wrote okay 42848. Okay, 4248. Uh, then I'm going to write a address which is karan.karan@gmail.com, and let me call him as an engineer. Engineer, and the password is still 123456. Okay. Now this Karan, when I send this request on sign up, he is in pending state. You see here, pending state. Now I create another. Before that, I have to do the router thing for this. So just give me 1 second. I'll just come to the router, and there is a router for the update, which is put router app.put, and this is going to be called on uh, CRM API slash users slash user ID. For a given user ID, I'll do the same things. I'll first check on auth JWT is a verify token, comma auth JWT dot is admin. Check if it is admin and verify token, and then you can just do user controller dot update. Okay. So far, so good. Now what I'm going to do is let me run the code again. Control C. For this, I should install node moon, but I'm not doing it right now. I like to start it again. So first of all, this is a get put query. In this put query, I'm going to call on localhost on user, and I'm going to pass the user ID, which is current 4248. This is the user ID. In the body, I'm going to say this is a raw body with JSON, and this body I'm going to say uh, user status is now approved. I think the spelling of approved is correct. APPROVED, approved. Okay, I send this and I run this. I also need to send the send the X access token, X access access token, and that token is going to be the token I'm sending everywhere else. This token, if I send, I should be able to get the user. I send the x-axis token to identify myself as the admin, and I say go to Karan and update his user status to approved. So far, so good. I click on send, and it requires admin role. Why does it require admin role? Let me log in as the admin one more time. Let me log in here. Yeah. And then, I mean, I had logged in before, so I was using the same token. I think that has expired. So I'll log in again and I'll just come to here. And in header, I'll just do access token and control A, control V. And then I'll just send it again. It says the user record has been updated successfully. Now, if I go and get the user with current 42 48, I should get the status as approved. No, I'll have to paste this, send again, and now this status is approved. You see, current. Before that, the user its status was not approved. It was pending. Once we generate the JWT, it will be valid within the given time. It will not allow user to perform date, delete, insert, etc. And it will allow. Yes, that is correct, Ankit. It will stay valid, but there will be. So there are two things that you have to understand. One is authentication. Second is authorization. JWT token will authenticate the user, and that user will have some powers over the data that he can use. For example, find all, find by ID, and update are operations that only the admin can perform. Nobody else can perform. So only admin have the authority to do these operations. Do you understand that part? That is just the extra thing that I want you to understand, Ankit. Okay, Ankit? Do you understand that part? Only admin can perform it. If admin is not there, then it will not perform. Yeah. Okay. So uh, that's the update operation. Now I'm going to push the changes to this added update, and for this admin needs JWT. Yes, exactly. That is true. Update and find by ID. Added update and find by ID controllers. Person user. I commit these changes and I push the origin. So far, so good. Now let's talk about something which is like a meta information about the whole thing. Okay. So I want to discuss a experiment that was run in 1940s. 1940s. This is an experiment in psychology. But before that, I'll just create the context about this experiment, which is about 1960s. In 1960s, um, engineers or machine learning there were machine learning engineers even then, ML engineers, and they were trying to create software or robots to play chess, and they were trying to see how to create a robot that can play chess. Okay. And they, after a couple of failed attempts, the initial idea was, if I have all the permutation and combination of chessboard, uh, I can find out what is the best move at each of the permutation and combination, and then I can work it out. So very soon they were able to find all the permutations, but it was still not working out. So they went back to an experiment run in psychology, and that is very relevant for today's discussion. Okay. That experiment was run on the grandmaster chess players, grandmasters of chess. In this experiment, there was some grandmasters and some new players or novice players who don't know chess very well. What experimenter did was he showed for 5 seconds a chessboard to the grandmaster as well as to the new player. Are you able to follow? There is a chessboard with bunch of pieces which is shown to the chess master and the novice player. for 5 seconds. Afterwards, they were given an exercise to recreate the chessboard from memory. Grandmaster have to create the chessboard again, and new player also had to create the chessboard again. Following so far? Yes or no? Now, here you will understand the point that I'm trying to make, but just bear with me with this. Now, there were some observation. No, and not empty chessboard. The chessboard had some pieces on top of it. Some combination of. They were shown a state of a game. A state of a game. Okay, they were shown a state of a game in which chess players and grandmaster have to recreate the same game out of memory. They have to create the same chessboard after out of memory. Now there were a couple of observations, and let me write those observations. They need to remember the state. Yes. First observation was grandmasters were much more able to remember the exact state of the game. They understood so they can create. They can look at a chess game for 5 seconds and they can recreate the same game in almost correct details. Whereas novice players cannot do that in 5 seconds. Novice can't. That is first observation. So there was something about the grandmasters that they can remember the chess game much better than the novice player. Are you able to understand this, Vivek? Gauri, are you able to understand? So, and the second observation is even more interesting. When grandmasters erred, when grandmasters erred, they did not change the game. What does that mean? Even if I give you the same game, imagine I read a sentence to you. When grandmaster erred, they did not change the game. Uh, no, they did not change the game. It means that the meaning of the game was not changed. What it means is the strategic advantage that the players had in the game stayed intact. Even if the game was changed, even if some pawns were here or there, the strategic advantage that you have in the game was still the same. For example, if I ask you to remember this sentence, they did not change the game, you remember that sentence and say another version of it. They not change the game. They did not change the game. The game was not changed. The sentences are different, but the meaning is the same. Similarly, when the grandmaster erred, the chessboard was still the same, although the pieces were not at the same position. Does that make sense? Okay. And the third observation is even more important. When you give a random board, you give a random chessboard. That means some random version of the chessboard which is not coming from a valid game. Yeah, so the grandmasters are granted for errors. Yes, they can error, but they will not make the error at the level of meaning. They will make the error at the level of the game itself. Like the pieces will be here and there, but the game is still the same. Whoever was winning, and whatever margin they were having at the winning, it was still the same. When you give a random chessboard, in which case the pieces are randomly put, then grandmaster was same as the novice player. uh, grandmaster were having the same precision as the novice player. If the game was a random game, then grandmasters cannot figure out the game itself. It is like if I write a random sentence, abx CDA, GFL, like this. Anyone who don't know English and somebody like you who know English have equal probability of remembering this the sentence because there is no meaning attached to the sentence. Okay. So I can give you a analogy of that experiment with yourself. Suppose you are there and a child is there who have not learned the language of English. If you give a sentence to the child, what will happen? You will remember the sentence much better than the child who don't know English because it will be very difficult for them to make sense of it. Even when the case is that you don't remember, I'll come to that, Ankit. AlphaGo, I'll come to that later. But try to understand this experiment. I know I have been waiting. You have been waiting for the point that I want to make with this, but just stay with me for a few more minutes. When you make a error in the sentence, the error will be such that the meaning of the sentence remains the same, although you change the words or alphabets a little. And the third is if I give you a random sentence, you will again, uh, yeah, you will again be same as the child who don't know English. Okay. So the idea which Arnav has rightly pointed out, the grandmasters were looking at the chessboard, and since they knew the theory of chess, they were able to form patterns on the board. They had the meaning attached to the board. They understood what these pieces and these combination of pieces meant for the game as a whole. And that is called as grandmaster's advantage. Okay. You can look at a board and very quickly figure out what that code means. Okay. Similarly, now with grandmasters, since the theory of chess is 500 years old, they know how a particular setting of the chessboard means, what a particular setting of the chessboard means, and how it works out in the sense of the game. What is the meaning of the game? Similarly, I want you to create these patterns, these architectural patterns of software. Okay. I want you to reason about the software at the level of patterns. I want you to spend time understanding the framework. And then the questions that you are asking will be easier for you to answer. Okay. If you spend time to understand the pattern, it will pay off you a lot in the future. But if you try to go through the code one line of code at a time, you will not be able to understand the bigger picture and you will not be able to reason about the code. Okay. And then you always be a novice software developer because you are just dealing at the level of lines of code rather than looking at the pattern of the application. Do you understand the point of all this discussion? This is the reason the starting of today's class I was discussing the architecture of the application in so much depth. Because once you understand the architecture, whenever an error comes, you know where the error is coming from. This is not gibberish or Latin for you once you understand the pattern. But if you try to stay at the level of the code, you will not understand the architecture and you will not be able to code it up. Okay. So we have to look at the code and find patterns such that we are able to use those patterns in our programs. Exactly. Exactly, Arnav. Architecture is the most important and the most highly paid thing in software development. If you can build proper architectures, you will be paid so much money that you will not know how to use it in your life. Okay. And there's no limit to how well an architecture can be. So you can keep on improving the architecture as you go along. Huh. This is the last class in the module? No. Do you have any references? There are a bunch of references, but uh, I don't know how to put it. Uh, there are some references on architecture, but they will not make sense unless you understand the point that I'm trying to make. If you understand this point, then rest of the things will make sense. But if you don't understand the point that I'm making in this class, those patterns or those references will not actually make sense to you because they all miss this crucial point of moving people from this mindset to the mindset of a grandmaster. I've not ever found out a place where that this particular idea is written. Okay. So yeah, that is important. There is something called as clean code, clean architecture book. You can refer to that, or there is Gang of Four book. You can refer to these books for more details. But yeah, if you understand this point, all you need to do is always look for patterns and try to see how a given pattern can be used across multiple problems. Okay. Try to, so the people always talk about going to the next level. So when you join at SD1 level in your company, and after that you gets promoted to SD2 level, and then you get promoted to SD3 level. And the idea of going to the next level is basically to build these patterns. First you build patterns at the level of functions, and you understand how to write a code which is functionally decomposed. Then you look at your code in terms of modules, and you get an idea of how to structure your code across modules. And then you go to SD3, where you look at different organizations in your company and try to see how those are structured across the organization. Okay. Across the company, how different organizations are structured and how different code bases are run. So at each level you have to build a larger array of patterns if you want to grow in the company. Okay. Any questions? For example, if we figure out the pattern of how to do authentication, we can utilize the same in every backend API. Exactly, Arnav, you got it. Yes. Yes, Arnav. And I like the way you are looking at this process. I think only Arnav is the person who is able to understand what I'm talking about. But yeah, very good, Arnav. And the way he's understanding, try to look at Ankit, try to look how Arnav is understanding this concept. He's understanding by applying what I'm saying. Okay. Try to apply it to whatever is covered in the class, and very quickly you will get these concepts. Okay. Uh, So that's it for today's class. I hope you have enjoyed. If you have more questions, you can ask. Otherwise, we'll end the class. Okay. I wish all of you become very good architects as you go along in your career, and then you remember what I said in this class, and then you attribute it to it. What about freelance? Freelance is the same. If you have these patterns in mind, then you can write the freelance work very quickly. If you understand the overall pattern of your application, then you can build applications in like 3 hours, and they will be paying you a lot of money for that 3 hours. Like you will be paid a lot of money for understanding the patterns. Okay. So yeah, uh, yeah, and this will help you in looking at somebody else's code and figuring it out. Okay, I have pushed the changes onto GitHub, and there are no more changes. So, and you can fetch them from the GitHub, and I'm going to stop the class now. I hope you have enjoyed it. Bye everyone. Thanks. Happy weekend. Merry Christmas. See you after the Christmas. Thanks. We have covered find user by ID and find all, and we have covered update. So we have covered all the user activities today. Okay. Yeah, sure. We'll end the class. Bye everyone.